Hey team, welcome to episode 153 of Transition Talk, where we talk about dental transitions and how to navigate the sometimes messy path to practice ownership. Insurance versus fee-for-service. It's one of the most complex and consequential dynamics in dentistry, and a question we get so often. Insurance can drive consistency and patient flow, but often comes with intricacies and frustration and reimbursements. A fee-for-service model can offer more autonomy, yet can also carry some risk. In this episode, we'll unpack both sides of the equation and take a closer look at how these models impact a dental transition and some of those pros and cons. But before we do that, Mr. Loretto.
You know what? I'm excited about this topic.
A lot of questions we
Joanna
get.
always brings these topics up, and I'm like, I don't know about this one. But, I start doing the little prep, and I get excited about it. So I don't know why I'm so excited about fee-for-service and PPO stuff.
No, let's not tell anyone that.
Yeah, I know. Oh, God. Our family already thinks we're weird enough.
They do.
Yeah.
Before we get going, I have to talk to you about, you are like our travel expert, travel aficionado. I had the worst travel experience of my life. So Bryn has a dance competition. It's in Nashville. We are leaving Monday night, both me and this other mom, and we just want to have a day of like work, right? Because we're already missing a whole week for this dance competition. I'm so excited. And so we booked the 6:15 to Nashville, get there at 8:15. A little late for kids. I have a 10-year-old. She's got an 8-year-old, almost 9. But we're like, it's fine. And so I have Chris and Lila with me too. I drug them along, and then it's just her daughter, and then Bryn, right? So 6 of us. And 2:00 that day, it's like, there's going to be a delay in your flight to like 7:30. And we're like, okay, no big deal. Some maintenance issue. We're like, fine, 7:30. So we get to the airport around 5:15, gets delayed to 8:30. We're at the gate. We're like waiting to get on. We're still like, okay, this is not ideal, but we're getting on the plane. Someone comes on the intercom and is like, so there's no AC on the plane. And so we're going to fix it, but we're hoping it'll be quick. At this point, I'm like, is this not American's Hub? Can you just get us another plane? Like, what in the heck? So then all of a sudden, literally in the span of 2 minutes, it goes 10:30, 11, 11:15, 11:45. So now our departure time is 11:45, arriving at 1:45. And I'm like, oh my God. So we go to the lounge. I get everyone in. Only perk of my existence.
Little mic drop there.
Is getting into the lounge. They close at 10:30, but we have to now change terminals. So we have to walk to the next terminal, get on the tram, do the whole thing.
For a dance competition.
For a dance competition.
For an 8-year-old.
For 10-year-olds.
I'm sorry. Now that's justified.
And
sorry.
8, 9-year-old.
Yeah.
And we finally get on the plane. They board us at the appropriate time. We sat there till 12:30. We land at 2:30. Our bags are there. So the people managed to get our bags there before us there. So they didn't want their people working late. But they didn't mind that we were on the plane just sitting there waiting because our bags were fully unloaded and waiting. There's like not a soul in this airport. I've never been in the backside of Nashville. They literally took us on a bus because they were like, you don't need to walk through the airport because there's no one here. Finally get our Turo. The guy was very lovely. Got in our minivan, load up all our stuff, drive to our Airbnb, and the code doesn't work. It is 3:00 in the morning now, and the code to our Airbnb does not work.
Oh, goodness.
We are walking around the house looking for extra keys. We are trying windows. We are trying doors. We have called the people 10 times. We have texted them. No response. So at 3:30, we have to get a Holiday Inn Express room, 2 of them, check into the Holiday Inn Express, get my children, everyone asleep. I am now so wired. Chris is like so angry that this trip is happening and
he could have stayed home.
And now he's like, literally, we probably could have like driven there at this point. And so we finally go to sleep. Only for me, I had a very important meeting that I had to log into. And so I probably went to sleep around 4:30 and woke up at 7:30 and took this meeting from a Holiday Inn lobby that did not give free breakfast. They would have charged me $16.99 for breakfast.
For the Holiday Inn.
So I had black coffee with my glasses on and my pajamas. No shame. I literally walked into that thing, had a black sweatshirt on, so it looked like I had something on, glasses, and sat and did this meeting. And then we got up, checked into our Airbnb, and the rest was fine.
How did the dance competition go?
They were supposed to be done on Thursday, but they made it to the Jam, which is on Friday.
Okay.
Yeah. We were supposed to fly home on Friday afternoon, but they made it and they released the schedule and their dances are after our flight is supposed to leave. So Chris and Lila left and me and Jess changed our flight to early Saturday morning. We booked a room at the Gaylord, which is where the dance competition was. And we finished out and they won multiple awards.
Oh,
and so
wow.
It was worth it.
That's
in
very
the
cool.
End.
Very
but
cool.
But man, trip, not a vacation.
Wow.
That is the epitome of that.
I remember all those days, girl. I do. I mean, all the basketball and all the volleyball stuff that I did with Cole and Bella, so I can remember.
But I'm like, I haven't been in an airport ever at 2:30, and I can't remember the last time I stayed up until 3:30 or 4. So I feel like now I have like a little, notch.
I don't have anything to top that, but I think it's always fun to share how I'm pretty good at some things, but not good at others. So when you have traveled 3 million miles, and when you talk to people, these executive platinum people, they've all made these same dumb mistakes. I was once at the Vegas airport sitting at gate 42, and gate 42 was going to Dallas. So was gate 43. So I just assumed when I walked up to gate 42, that's my flight. And so when they said to board in first class, because that's how I roll, they said denied. And they said, sir, I think you were on the other flight. I walked over there and they're like, your flight left. So that's an example of not paying attention. I was once in DFW not checking in. I didn't check in. You check in 45 minutes is kind of a rule. Well, guess what? I was there. I could see there wasn't a line through security and was like, it's going to go right through. So I just did my little conference call. And then I went to check in because I'm about ready to board and got denied. Had to go sweet talk my way through management, let me on the plane. I was in Vail once where the mechanical issue, same thing. It's going to be 4 hours, going to fly apart in from Denver. So I'm like, why would I stay here in Vail? Let's just leave the airport. I left my car there. I was going to come back in a week, go down the street, get some breakfast, come back, do a little update on my phone. Flight left. I guess they fixed it. Had to wait the next day. Christy, I could stand here all day with another 10 of these. I have felt it. I have experienced it.
I really expected one of them to be, didn't you forget pants one time?
Oh, God. Don't let Roxanne on here. Belts, underwear, dress shoes. Got tennis shoes, dress
For
shoes.
Speaking,
oh, yeah. No, you got to. Oh, God. Ties at like nice events. Socks. Like I had white socks. I got the black suit. Dumb stuff, Christy. Yes.
I might have a coat that I bought at Brooks Brothers in the Kansas City airport because I forgot that it was cold in other places.
Yeah. All I say is don't judge me on all of my flaws. Just think about my one good skill set and say, well, he's good at that. And hire me for that only.
Oh my gosh. Well, this episode is about another necessary evil. I think travel is a necessary evil to go have some fun in an airplane. This is about insurance and fee for service. So I'll transition us over. This is definitely one of the number one questions we get when we are helping a buyer or helping a seller when they're looking to transition and wanting to know the pros and cons of, is this insurance, this is an insurance-based practice. I really dreamed of having a fee for service or vice versa, or it's fee for service, but I feel like I'm going to need insurance to grow it. How do I do that? And I think that the important thing is to start just from a very high level perspective and talk about what are the things that we look at when we look at an insurance or a fee for service-based practice and how those things can influence it. And then we'll dive into each of both insurance-based and fee for service and talk about the unique things that go there. We'll of course talk about Delta Dental Premier. I hope one day, 5 years from now, when you listen to this episode, that's aged and maybe that's not a thing anymore, not a problem. But for right now, it's an ongoing problem. And then we'll talk a little bit about kind of how to manage the changing from one to the other if that's a goal that you have. So let's start with general factors, right? What are some things when you think about just insurance and fee for service that you really feel like we need to talk about? Let's start with risk. I guess we'll start there, and then I'm sure you have other pieces.
Yeah, I think we start just with that. We're acquiring a practice in this example. It's PPO, so there's certainly some risk. The risk is obviously that, you don't want to lower your fees. The risk is that you are in network and that network could change the fees. It could bring in 3 more dentists down the street. Everyone's in network and you're all competing against the same network patient. You haven't been able to differentiate yourself from a brand yet. So certainly some risks to being associated with a PPO plan.
Yeah, and I think if you think about the fee for service, right, the same risk exists. You're now taking on, if you're buying 100% of that practice, will those patients transition to you, right? They have a choice of where they're going. They're not stuck there because of their insurance. And so there's always a risk there of how is that goodwill transfer going to happen? What is that going to look like? And can you do the work, which we'll talk about here in a minute. Talk to me about patients and kind of some of the operational kind of components that
look, I think you just kind of hit on that. You don't have a relationship with these patients yet. So if your thought and vision was, hey, I'm just going to take this practice over and convert them over, unfortunately, you don't have a relationship. It's a lot easier to convert, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, how to convert out of a PPO to fee-for-service type model. That starts with a relationship. And the example of you acquiring a practice, we need to, for the most part, not make a change and to know that the relationship over the next 12, 18, 24 months, 2, 3, 4 cycles of hygiene, that those patients start to roll through, that we can start establishing which of these plans make sense and which don't.
Yeah. And I think when we talk about if you're acquiring an insurance-based practice and they have 20 plans, right? I don't think either of us are saying that you can, as part of your diligence, look at those 20 plans. And if the bottom 3 plans have 1 or 2 patients and you choose not to credential with those because like over time you're going to, fine, right? But like you can't choose to not credential with any of them. That would be a major mistake. And you also have to operationally plan for that credentialing because it's not something that's easy. It's not something that takes just, a one form and then you're done. Each state and each insurance company within that state have different credentialing requirements. It is very tedious. I mean, next level and dental claim support, like those are companies you're going to need to have, in my opinion, you need an expert to help you with that because that can take 3 to 6 months or longer if you don't do it in the proper channels, if you don't expedite it in the right way. And so it's certainly something you got to plan for if you're doing.
I know your team spends a lot of time combing through these financial statements and helping them, but this is a big part of buyer due diligence as well, is helping them not with just the process and understanding how this is going to work, but just the complexity of making sure they're doing it right. Because at the point of closing, we need for all this billing to work out.
Absolutely.
We're doing a procedure of $700 crown, and I need to get it reimbursed.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen unless that paperwork is filled and we don't get a reimbursement.
And oftentimes, like, it's not as straightforward. Sometimes your practice management system, if you're a seller and you've never ran a report to know what percentage your patients are of X, Y, or Z insurance company, like, please learn how to do that because those are oftentimes the challenging components in a diligence of transition of a business is not understanding how much of your patient base comes from Delta Premier, how much comes from Aetna, or how much comes from United, and being able to really kind of give the buyer that information. And then buyer, if you're buying the practice and that information isn't readily available, that's when looking in charts, doing your homework to try to find as much information as you can while you're diligencing the practice so you know what you're stepping into.
The one thing that you just said, I want to make sure the listeners is following here, is these are the active patients. So in other words, you may be doing your chart audit and looking at inactive patients that maybe haven't been in the practice in the last 24 months, or you're relying on the broker who said that there was maybe 50% of the practice was perhaps in PPO and 50% was fee for service. But the reality is when you close, you will sometimes see those numbers to be widely different. So it is your job is to get that breakdown and do that due diligence. And so if a broker does say, hey, it's 51%, 29% of any of these categories, go ahead and do that audit in the practice and say, well, let's go ahead and take, how did you come up with that 29% with Aetna? Let's look at those active patients so I can see that and to confirm those numbers. And again, just so we can set expectations going forward. And I like what you said. If the goal is we're trying to hopefully get out of network at some point, then we do maybe evaluate some of those, call it less than 5% plans. And do we need to re-engage in those or set those relationships up, knowing if we've got a short-term goal in 2 years to maybe be fee for service?
Yeah, and knowing like what your opportunities for growth are, right? Like if they're not doing any marketing, they're referring everything out, like your ability to replace the patient base you might lose from not credentialing with those kind of bottom rung companies is probably safer than if this thing is maxed out and they're doing everything right, then that conversation. So that's why, again, every transition is different. So you got to kind of look at all the various components together. Let's focus in on just insurance-based practices, right? So like if I am buying an insurance-based practice, what are some things that I as a buyer or as a seller am going to need to focus in on? Both patients maybe.
Yeah, so we're looking at the numbers. A lot of times we're just looking at from a financial perspective and say, hey, this is a $1 million collection practice, and maybe that means there's $750,000 of restorative. And perhaps you're working at a practice today and doing $60,000 to $70,000 of restorative today means, yeah, you can do it. But this could be in a practice that has just all PPO and just really bad reimbursement rates. And, it could be where that means the production actually from a doctor's standpoint was not 60 to 70, but more like 130 to 140. And so now we need to go into what that daily schedule looks like and be able to ask that doctor, can you do this amount of procedures per day? You're able to do that crown prep in 15 minutes. Is this the amount of time you're able to, have you ever checked 3 hygienists? Because it's a big hygiene practice. And again, lots of write-offs there as well. So it's a process of looking at numbers, yes, but also looking, can the doctor do the work with this perhaps model that's heavy insurance-based with big write-offs?
Yeah, and the time too, right? Like the time it would take to be able to kind of spin with patients and vice versa, which we'll talk about here in a second. clearly insurance reimbursement rates, we know that they're not ideal, but it seems that they're getting worse over time. And so how would that impact kind of a transition and kind of what we need to think about from a diligence standpoint?
I mean, there's literally thousands of people on Facebook groups talking about that we've got this inflation factor in the U.S., call it 3-4%, but yet these fees have been flat for the most part across the board with no increases with these insurance plans. And so it's hard with all of our labor costs and all of our direct materials and fixed costs, just things that just continually have increased over the last couple of decades, but yet we're still in this process of low fees. In the end, it is what it is. And I think as a business owner, you get yourself into the situation where I'm perhaps hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, maybe in personal and student. I just borrowed X amount of dollars to buy this practice. This model has to work for you. Mm-hmm. And so you've got to budget for, in this example, for this process of low fees. And you need to adjust your speed to be able to do it because of obviously our personal and business debt that we just took on to get that return on investment of this business. And so, yeah, it's not ideal, but I would say you know what you're getting yourself into. The only way to fix it is going to be to change that brand and to create that line out the door and to be able to do those procedures that perhaps weren't being done and change that marketing so that we can start working on retiring and getting out of some of these networks that don't make sense.
Yeah, and I think clearly there are patients that are price sensitive. And so if you decide to drop certain insurances, or you'll probably lose those patients. But I think the pros of insurance, and we see this a lot, if there's a major employer in your area that carries a certain insurance, I mean, insurance plans can create a steady flow of patients, right? Like in kind of a consistent flow of patients. Mm-hmm. And so I think that if you're a practice that is needing a patient boost, right? Like the smart add of an insurance company, right? If you're already PPO based and you're going to add another one or change which ones you take, clearly being very informed about the employers in your area, what are they offering, kind of what does that look like is going to be a big pro for you and important to understand in the diligence arena.
I mean, look, going back to the whole thing with the relationship and the fee for service, I'm going to go down this road I'm not the expert at, and you're probably going to make fun of me right now.
I'm not.
But I think about women and I think about their hairdresser. And a really good hairdresser is extremely valuable. Mm-hmm. And they charge a ridiculous amount of money. And sometimes that dollar amount doesn't make sense, so they try somebody else. And then they would obviously not like that and be in tears and go back and be willing to pay. You know, this process with the insurance is you don't know, right? I'm the new patient. I'm in your practice, Christy. I was with the old guy, and I really like you. And then now 6 months later, 12 months later, now you're telling me that it's going to be different and I'm going to break up with you because of this letter and this and that. Then yeah, I'm going to go. But what happens is I'm going to miss you. And it's having a plan and a process to be able to, we want you back, we love you, be able to follow back up and welcome them back and be able to explain even how the insurance process and game works. Kind of like the hairdresser, to be quite honest. The hairdresser will let you break up with them once, but they won't let you break up with them twice. Right?
I'm going to add an extra layer to yours.
Okay.
So it's also possible in the hairdresser analogy that if I think about this fee for service, that maybe someone starts charging so much that you're like, okay, you're not even this good, right? And there is a middle tier, right? Of someone who kind of isn't too big for their britches yet and doesn't think they're just the best and maybe wants more quantity versus kind of the high end person who's like, I'd rather charge a ton and lose some patients and have a lower volume than kind of be mid tier. So I do think there's like that too, right? Like I don't want it to come across as though we're saying like all insurance is like poor quality and bad, right? Like there's the mid tier too, where it's like, I'm good, like I'm fine, but I'm only accepting 1 or 2 insurance carriers. And then I've got some fee for service. And I've really developed this practice. It's like a good mix for what I feel like my quality is too.
No question. There's certain insurance plans that obviously work. And if you can be an efficient and get that procedure done, it's extremely profitable. Even there are certain states where the Medicaid reimbursements are more than in some of the insurance plans. Mm-hmm. And so same thing. If it makes sense, then you absolutely do it. We're just discussing when it doesn't, when that 40% write-off and it's just, you're so frustrated and you're not profitable, the hygiene department is not profitable, when you're on struggle street, then you got to make those adjustments. It's a very valid point. We have a lot. I mean, I'd say in the Kane Waters model, we probably have of these 3,700 clients as of this recording, I don't know, maybe 30% are all fee for service. And in other words, 70% are carrying. And these are some of the top practices in the country. So absolutely, there's a place for all this for sure.
And then I think a final point before we move on to fee-for-service is just kind of there's an administrative burden of insurance-based practices. You oftentimes have to either pay for someone to manage your billing, or you have to have a dedicated staff, 1 or 2, depending on the size of your practice, that is purely there to kind of help bill insurance, follow up with insurance, very knowledgeable on how to bill and bill correctly and follow up, et cetera. And so with staff not being necessarily the cheapest component of overhead these days, that's clearly something to consider as you look and see. And if you're looking to acquire an insurance-based practice, understanding who does that. Are they qualified? What are they going to look like? Are they staying on? Is that the doctor who's done it? What is your capability to do that, et cetera?
But yeah, and add to that too is not just having that person, but now the willingness, because again, we just purchased this, call it $1 million practice, is bringing in an outside consultant to see what those fees are, how that billing process, when was the last time that we requested a fee increase. In some of those, hey, you keep trying, you make these small adjustments. I mean, this is profit. If we can go from a $70 reimbursement to $80 to how many of those procedures are there, that's truly profit each time per day, then that consultant will pay for themselves.
Yeah, agree. So let's talk about fee-for-service. We've covered some of these points, but I think it's important to kind of start back. If you're buying a fee-for-service practice, you clearly have more control over your own pricing. These patients are coming to you for you, and clearly they can still be price sensitive, right? So it's not like there's not a ceiling on what they're willing to pay, but clearly they have decided that they are okay, that they don't have insurance with an employer, or they've decided, hey, I like you and I like the way I'm treated here and I like what I'm doing and I'm willing to pay out of pocket for that kind of full amount. And you typically have higher margins clearly per procedure because you're not having to take that discounted cut off what you're doing. Thoughts on a just fully fee-for-service practice? Anything we haven't talked about thus far?
I mean, it's very attractive from a valuation standpoint. It's the mindset of to get to the same 80,000 of restorative. I'm doing less procedures. It's obviously in a place where people value the doctor. So just the whole overarching mentality of the patients, the mentality of the team, owner, we're typically more profitable, just a typically more happier environment. So, I mean, certainly that's something to try to strive for. And so if I'm valuing a practice or if I'm looking at 2 or 3 different options and one of these is going to be higher top line, higher profitability, fee for service, less amount of work, I mean, obviously I'm going to want to lean more towards that one than the one that I've got to work twice as hard at.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, like in a transition, right? Like I mentioned earlier when we first started, the goodwill transition of a fee for service practice does have an extra sensitivity to it. And so depending on what those relationships are with the doctor and the team, because the patient is showing up for that experience of that practice and that level of care, you're going to have to make sure that both your clinical skills are up to par and that you can do everything that's being done in that office, but that also from a just transition of those relationships and kind of your relationship with the seller, that has to be part of that transition plan.
You know, one thing I'd want to add here is something is sometimes overlooked is if you do find this clinical, call it expert, this dentist that does everything all in a house, has built this fee-for-service relationship, that sometimes that dentist has done a lot of really good work on those patients. And so the buyer is now buying this, but there's not a lot of leftover dentistry.
Yep.
And we've seen that where they're struggling a little bit. So let's be aware of that. You know, so you may buy this well-known name and well-known reputable person, but they've also kind of a clinical well-known guy or gal.
Yeah.
And there's not much left there.
Yeah. And we've talked about that, right? Like you can be the guy or the gal, but that doesn't necessarily mean that always results in like more value, right? Like that is different from this fee-for-service component. Like you can have a fee-for-service practice where it's an overall experience of a business and a profession and a practice, right? Not just you. Right? Like they're not coming for you because you're the only one who does all on fours within 50 miles of a city, right? So yes, good point out there. Delta Premier, we have to at least touch on Delta Premier.
So this is so much that we see. So and I'm going to really kind of dive in and ask you the questions here. When you're leading your buyer team and your valuation team, this whole Delta Premier thing is a huge, huge problem, okay? The buyer and seller and broker, in my opinion, are many times completely misunderstood how this process works. So they know there's going to be some discount. So walk me through. So I'm buying your practice, Christy, and you are a Delta Premier practice. And we're just going to throw out that I'm not going to be able to be grandfathered in. And half of the practice that you do, half is this Premier. How does this impact valuation? How does it impact lending? And how does it impact you and me?
In a private transition, so that's all we're talking about here. In a private transition, if you are, as a buyer, unable to get the Delta Premier credentialing, then what that means is if in that example you had 50% of the practice was Delta Premier, typically, and again, this is a rough estimate that I know we use, I know some banks use, there might be like a delta here, 5 or 10% based on who you talk to, either direction. Roughly your fees for the same group that are now moved to Delta PPO, which is what you could get, it's about a 30% cut on your collections for that 50%, right? So let's say it was a $500,000 practice. That would mean 30% of $500,000 is assumed to be just gone into the wind, not going to be able to be collected. And that would mean in order to have the same level of collection, that $1 million practice, you would have to make up that 30% of 500. I'm bad at math. 150. With other things you're referring out, additional growth, etc. So if I'm a seller and that is my practice, I have to understand that a bank and a buyer is going to discount my practice and the value of my practice by that 30%, right? Not 30% of your overall value, but by that 150,000 of saying, okay, I'm not going to be able to physically replace that, and neither is anyone else. This is very different than if you just had a practice that did implants and your buyer didn't do implants. We would never suggest that the value of your practice is different because the buyer doesn't do a procedure. This is you are doing something that no one else is going to be able to get now. And therefore, unless you stay, and even then that's challenging, that's not going to be replaced.
Yeah, I think from a buyer's perspective, if the business is doing $1 million and it is the Premier and it's got this overhead of 60%, then we know it makes $400,000. The broker would then take that information, location, all the risk, and come up with the value. Maybe that value is $850,000 to $900,000. But that broker has to discount that practice based on this Premier status. It's the only fair thing to do. And so it's going to be fair for the buyer and fair to the bank. Now, the seller may not like it, and perhaps the broker didn't do a good job of, quote unquote, selling the listing service to the seller, didn't set us up for success here. And now all of a sudden, we have a very interested buyer, very interested seller. But now this problem is, what does the new cash flow look like for the buyer? And our team, bank, now is getting in. Two people really like each other, but the expectation was not set correctly from the broker. So it is certainly something that for the sellers listening and buyers listening, just know this is an issue and it needs to be addressed very early on. Now, there's certain states, as we said, there's certain demands, there's certain specialties that we've seen that it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
You may be in rural, I don't know, just pick a state, making it up, Indiana, that maybe has a lesser dentist population and we need more dentists there in the state and this and that. And maybe the write-offs are 10%. Maybe everyone's grandfathered in to one of these insurance companies. And so in that case, sure, it all makes sense and no discounts because the grandfathering is going to work. So it really is like a state-by-state basis, and we need to analyze what that insurance write-off is if you don't qualify.
Yeah, and if you're looking at a practice or you are a practice that has Delta Premier, literally the only way is to call Delta and talk to them about what it looks like. What does this look like if someone were to enter my practice? What would it look like hypothetically if I were to sell 100%? And then before you actually do anything, call again and make sure you get the same answer, because we've heard varying answers. But there certainly are states where people can be grandfathered in, or you can pass it down one time, but only once. And then there are certain states where we know it's just going to be zero. California, no more Delta Premier, no matter what, So certainly a unique caveat to kind of our conversation today is this Delta Premier component. Okay, what if you have a practice, and again, we've touched on this a little bit, so we don't have to spend a ton of time, but if you have a practice that is fee-for-service that you want to add insurance to, there are people that want to do that, or vice versa, which is probably the more common. I have an insurance-based practice that I want to kind of strip those away and slowly kind of make it a fee-for-service. What's your advice there?
So if I was at 10 plans, I'd start with the ones that have the least amounts, call it plans number 9 and 10. I would get my team to help educate all of my patients. So you notify, obviously, the insurance, typically some type of 60, 90-day, 180-day notice period. Notify the insurance. We notify these small groups of patients, both via phone, both via email, as they're coming in for their recall, explaining how we're going to be working going forward with their particular insurance and seeing what's working, getting that conversion, explaining how the $300 that their employer, they pay their employer for the dental coverage, how we could do the same thing with our dental program in network here at the Loretto Dentistry office, whatever it is, getting that conversion, getting that script down. And then once we see that success, we move on to number 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2 until it makes sense or doesn't make sense. And it may be when we decide just to leave insurance 1 and 2 on because we have so many, there's a huge school district and I got a lot of school district patients and my wife was a teacher and I just can't say no to that group of people, whatever. It's your practice. It's your group of people. So we need to identify that. And then obviously it's a slow brand of change. It's marketing changes. It's the cosmetic changes we're doing in the practice. It's the website. It's the brand that we're just trying to slowly change as we start to demand more from the patient, meaning a different level of service as well as perhaps a different fee. Very rare do I see the fee-for-service I want to add PPO, but 2 examples would probably be I want to start a fee-for-service practice because I just came from one and it's so slow that nothing is working and the bills are just coming in that we've got to add a network or 2. The other example is I've seen it where established doctors, they go to these seminars and decide to hire a new consultant and maybe they're in 15 dental plans and the consultant says it's a bad idea, get out of network, here's my marketing, and we get all 15 and the practice is pretty much close to bankruptcy and we got to add those insurance plans back there. That strategy was just way too fast. You just slow, learn from each one is what I would recommend. It could take several years to get out, but for the most part, people are trying to get out of network and not trying to get in network from the fee-for-service model. Unless it's a brand new startup practice, I would never start fee-for-service. I would turn everything on just to get as many patients through the door.
Agree. And I think, again, we've said this in previous episodes, but kind of starting with the end in mind, right? If you are acquiring and buying a fee-for-service practice and you need to increase some patient flow, know that once you add a plan, it's hard to take it back, right? And some of these practices that we are talking about who have gone PPO to fee-for-service, it's been over a 5-6 year period, 7-year period where they've slowly rolled those off. So just being very cognizant and goal-oriented as you think about this, like everything else. But yeah, I think this is a complicated topic. There's a lot of data that you need in order to be able to assess whatever opportunity you're looking at. If you're a seller, really being thoughtful and understanding how insurance plays into your practice, what insurance is most critical to your practice. If you were going to roll it off, how would you do it? Again, not that you have to make that choice, but if a buyer wanted to do that you would be educated enough to talk about it in a transition perspective. I think that education and that knowledge base is what you need if you're looking to buy or sell a practice from this regard.
Insurance is part of this game. It's part of the game as being in the dental space. This call it a coupon for the work they get. You have to understand how to navigate this, both as the buyer, the seller, and certainly as an owner, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, team, that's all we have for today. Thanks for joining us on episode 153 of Transition Talk. As always, make sure to share the transition love with those who may not know of us yet, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. Until next time.
See you guys. Safe travels.